my painting started, or my artwork started way back when, and the piece at the south of the church was one of my first sculptures, which I called Beginnings, because it's the opposing digit, which I think was good for the evolution of the human brain, because we learned to use tools better that way. Starting with this one over here, was inspired by a visit to Naomi's and Rob's Hornby place, and there again the beautiful open sky, which I haven't seen for years and years and years. So I call this my skyscape, and I still use the by the way, the plywood is I use 7-ply plywood. And why did I start that? Well, I used to remodel kitchens, and when I remodeled kitchens, I'd pull apart countertops, and you'd see these wonderful splinters, and I thought, holy crow, that's really wonderful. And then I thought deeper and deeper, and when I realized that I'd taken home some chipper knives that had been misground for whole logs when I worked at Canadian Sumner Iron Works. Anyhow, I took a sledgehammer and broke them into about 5 or 6 inch pieces, and I go across the interior layers of 7-ply plywood, and then I rip them apart with big, it's all brutal force, but brute force, there you are. And you get some of these gorgeous effects that I think are, so I call it exposing the inner beauty of plywood. Here I've done a little different. I call that my cityfication. I did see, because it seems to me that the city we're all going to be housed in large vertical boxes, and agribusiness does all the farming. We don't need farming anymore. So this one I call If the Grid Should Fail. Anyhow, these two are a couple of older ones that I did. This was my first one that I did about cityfication, because I think it's not a word, but I coined it, and I say, our vertical boxes, that's what I think is going to happen. The fires that happened at Fort McMurray, and I have another one in the church, but when you get a major event like this, it just tears at your guts, and you have to somehow acknowledge that this has happened. So let's go over to this side. This one again is a nightscape, and I've got stars in there. I know that's not what but artists can take whatever color they like. So, using a little different techniques now that I'm using with power tools to create this, and 9 of these I did in the last 6 months, because caregiver who, people ask me, why aren't you doing your artwork anymore? I said, well, I've got a full-time job. Lassie, my ever-loving, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's about 13 years ago, and when I was first taking care of her alone, there wasn't time for any of this, but now when we had caregivers, said, so why don't you get off your butt and do something? So I started the new stuff. So let's go to the church. This was, I did a series of when they had the Alberta fires in 1990, was it? And so I did a series of those. And this is the one that I did the Fort McMurray fires. You know, you get images that are, again, so heart-rending that, but you need to document it. So, that led me to another bit over here. When the Twin Towers came down, I know for me, I wanted to symbolize this horrendous thing that happened, and I know it was smoke, but smoke's kind of gray. I wanted to, so I did it like fire. But for me, that was acknowledging the fact of 9/11, and that had repercussions all over the globe. And so many things are so, well, I don't know. Let's move to my political corner.
Sounds like it's all political to me, John. I love this one. Like color.
That small painting is another one of the Alberta fires from way back when. But this one I call the shadow of the atom. I think that once the genie was let out of the box, we don't know where it's going to go, but certainly we know there's going to be change. There's always going to be change. So it seemed like a figure to me, and I thought, well, you know, and I chose the colors because I chose the colors, whatever. So this corner, this was inspired when I went to New York to visit my daughter. It's a long time ago. Anyhow, but I saw all the business types there going through, and they walk right through the people on the street, and we've certainly caught up to them doing that now. Anyhow, that's my little statement on haves and have-nots, and I think, what did I say? Oh yeah, the gap gets larger, it trumps all. This one I did, it's like a head and it's got a meat hook in there, and this is my comment on Canadian content of free trade, because when they did the free trade deal, we need to have trade, but what we did was we gave equal access to our power to the United States, and we cannot give any of our companies a better rate in spite of the fact than the Americans down south, in spite of the fact that we're in a much colder climate. And what really worries me is water power. Will they have equal access to water? Big question we have to think about. Now, this is the other side of bovine growth hormone. Cows don't sit on their rumps, but when I heard that the cows were given so much bovine somatotropin that their udders got so large that when they got up, they'd step on their own teats and tear them off. Oh, God, that hurts just to... anyhow, I went to research in the library. At that time, they only had microfiches. But I spent a week there, and holy crow, the things that went on. When they give the cows so much growth hormone, they really give an awful lot of milk, but they take so much of their nutrients that they can't eat enough to produce all the milk. So while they're in full force in milk production, they start eating off their own body tissues. So guess what? They get sick. So they're on a full regimen of antibiotics during their milking time. But in spite of that, they still get a lot of foot rot, and they get mastitis, which means that pus gets into the milk. And anyhow, we don't know what's in our milk, but that's